AWS Cluster Configuration Description. Configure AWS cluster based on node type and count. Prerequisites. AWS account. ING user with appropriate permissions. Use cases. High performance computing. Data analysis and processing. Web application hosting. Game development. Steps. Choose a node type. Specify the number of nodes. Configure cluster settings. Launch the cluster. Challenges and fixes. Insufficient resources. Increase node count. Upgrade node type. High costs. Optimize node configuration. Use spot instances. Utilize reserved instances. Reduce instance size. Utilize less powerful instance types. Utilize lower tiers. Utilize less expensive storage classes. Leverage cost optimization tools such as AWS Budgets, Cost Explorer, and AWS Savings Plans. Automate resource scaling to reduce unnecessary usage. Performance issues. Monitor cluster performance. Optimize cluster configuration. Use a faster node type. Enable caching. Use faster storage. Increase network bandwidth. Reduce resource contention. Optimize application code. Implement load balancing. Enable application level caching. Utilize AWS services such as Amazon CloudFront or Amazon S3 transfer acceleration. Security vulnerabilities. Use security groups. Enable encryption. Regularly update software. Implement security best practices. Utilize AWS Security Hub and Guard Duty. Utilize AWS Identity and Access Management ING. Implement multi-factor authentication. Utilize VPC security groups. Implement network segmentation. Enable logging and monitoring of security events. Scalability limitations. Use auto-scaling groups. Optimize cluster configuration. Use a larger node type. Utilize horizontal scaling. Leverage serverless compute services. Implement load balancing. Enable automatic scaling policies. Consider using AWS Lambda or AWS Fargate. Cluster instability. Monitor cluster health. Check for resource constraints. Restart or replace faulty nodes. Implement health checks. Enable automatic recovery mechanisms. Utilize AWS CloudWatch. Consider using AWS Elastic Load Balancing ELB. Data loss. Use a reliable storage solution. Enable backups. Implement data replication. Utilize AWS S3 for data storage. Enable data encryption. Implement a data retention strategy. Utilize AWS backup. Configure data replication across multiple availability zones. Limited access. Configure access controls. Use VPN or SSH tunnels. Enable remote access. Utilize ING roles. Configure VPC endpoints. Implement network security policies. Lack of monitoring. Use cloud monitoring services. Set up alerts. Enable logging. Utilize AWS CloudWatch. Enable logging for critical services and applications. Configure alerts for key performance indicators. Troubleshooting difficulties. Use AWS support resources. Consult with AWS experts. Utilize community forums. Leverage AWS documentation and support resources. Utilize AWS CloudTrail for auditing and troubleshooting. Engage with the AWS community for assistance. Limited automation. Use AWS tools and services. Implement scripting and automation. Utilize cloud orchestration platforms. Leverage AWS CloudFormation for infrastructure automation. Utilize AWS Systems Manager for configuration management. Utilize AWS Code Deploy for application deployment automation. Integration challenges. Use AWS integration services. Develop custom integrations. Utilize third-party tools. Utilize AWS Lambda for integration with other services. Utilize AWS EventBridge for event-driven integration. Leverage AWS API Gateway for API integration. Cost optimization challenges. Use AWS cost optimization tools. Optimize cluster configuration. Negotiate pricing with AWS. Leverage AWS budgets and Cost Explorer. Utilize AWS savings plans for discounted pricing. Utilize AWS reserved instances for long-term commitments. Optimize instance types and sizes. Enable spot instance bidding. Deployment complexity. Use AWS deployment tools. Implement automation. Follow AWS best practices. Utilize AWS CloudFormation for automated deployment. Utilize AWS Code Pipeline for continuous delivery. Implement infrastructure as code principles. Configuration management challenges. Use configuration management tools. Implement automation. Follow AWS best practices. Utilize AWS Systems Manager for configuration management. Utilize AWS Config for configuration auditing and compliance. Implement a centralized configuration repository. Security configuration challenges. Use AWS security tools. Implement security best practices. Follow AWS security standards. Utilize AWS Security Hub for security threat detection. Utilize AWS Guard Duty for threat detection. Utilize AWS Inspector for security vulnerability assessments. Monitoring and logging challenges. Use AWS monitoring and logging tools. Implement monitoring best practices. Follow AWS monitoring and logging standards. Utilize AWS CloudWatch for monitoring and logging. Configure logging for key events and services. Implement custom metrics and dashboards. Scaling challenges. Dash. Use AWS scaling tools. Dash. Implement scaling best practices. Dash. Follow AWS scaling standards. Dash. Utilize AWS auto-scaling for automatic scaling. Dash. Implement scaling policies based on performance metrics. Dash. Configure scaling groups for different workloads. Dash. Troubleshooting challenges. Dash. Use AWS troubleshooting tools. Dash. Follow AWS troubleshooting best practices. Dash. Consult with AWS support. Dash. Utilize AWS CloudTrail for debugging and troubleshooting. Dash. Utilize AWS support for technical assistance. Dash. Engage with the AWS community for troubleshooting guidance. Dash. Cost management challenges. Dash. Use AWS cost management tools. Dash. Implement cost optimization best practices. Dash. Follow AWS cost management standards. Dash. Utilize AWS budgets and Cost Explorer. Dash. Implement cost allocation tags. Dash. Utilize AWS savings plans for cost optimization. Dash. Performance tuning challenges. Dash. Use AWS performance tuning tools. Dash. Implement performance optimization best practices. Dash. Follow AWS performance tuning standards. Dash. Utilize AWS CloudWatch for performance monitoring. Dash. Optimize instance types and sizes. Dash. Enable caching and other performance optimizations. Dash. Security best practices challenges. Dash. Implement AWS security best practices. Dash. Follow AWS security standards. Dash. Use AWS security tools. Dash. Utilize AWS Security Hub and Guard Duty. Dash. Implement multi-factor authentication. Dash. Enable encryption for data at rest and in transit. Dash. Deployment best practices challenges. Dash. Implement AWS deployment best practices. Dash. Follow AWS deployment standards. Dash. Use AWS deployment tools. Dash. Utilize AWS CloudFormation for infrastructure automation. Dash. Utilize AWS Code Pipeline for continuous delivery. Dash. Management best practices challenges. Dash. Implement AWS management best practices. Dash. Follow AWS management standards. Dash. Use AWS management tools. Dash. Utilize AWS Systems Manager for configuration management. Dash. Implement a centralized logging and monitoring strategy. Dash. Troubleshooting best practices challenges. Dash. Implement AWS troubleshooting best practices. Dash. Follow AWS troubleshooting standards. Dash. Use AWS troubleshooting tools. Dash. Utilize AWS CloudTrail for auditing and troubleshooting. Dash. Enable logging for critical services and applications. Dash. Cost optimization best practices challenges. Dash. Implement AWS cost optimization best practices. Dash. Follow AWS cost optimization standards. Dash. Use AWS cost optimization tools. Dash. Utilize AWS budgets and Cost Explorer. Dash. Implement cost allocation tags. Dash. Utilize AWS savings plans for cost optimization. Dash. Performance tuning best practices challenges. Dash. Implement AWS performance tuning best practices. Dash. Follow AWS performance tuning standards. Dash. Use AWS performance tuning tools. Dash. Utilize AWS CloudWatch for performance monitoring. Dash. Optimize instance types and sizes. Dash. Enable caching and other performance optimizations.